In today's episode, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with my friend and one of my favorite people to learn from, Ceci Craft. Now, Ceci is the Director of Mental Performance, Life Skills, and Education for the Philadelphia Phillies. She's spent over 10 years in Major League Baseball, and she's also worked with the U.S. Army and Special Forces. In today's conversation, this is one of my favorite conversations I've had with Ceci, and we're talking about the concept of confidence. And we dive into her ideas about, is all confidence created equal? Are we creating the right and learning environments? Are we giving the right feedback? We're actually building the right type of confidence that leads to performance. I know you're going to have so many great takeaways from this conversation, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with Ceci Craft. Ceci Craft, welcome to the Being Champions podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on.
Yeah, Ceci, this is really cool because we connected 5 years ago. COVID hit. We were all sent home. And I remember I was sitting at my house. I was like, man, I want to start this Monday mindset session and randomly reached out to you, cold email. You got back to us. But Ceci, to this day, 5 years later, I still have student athletes. One's actually in the Naval Academy, and we still talk about your whole concept of dominating your 3-foot space. So here we are 5 years later, and you still have such a tremendous impact just from that one conversation with our kids 5 years ago. Our baseball team references you all the time. So I'm so excited and honored to have you on today.
Well, it's really exciting to be on, and I've enjoyed the relationship and how it's gone over the last couple of years and checking in on all the programs you've been part of and are working on. And I just think what you guys are doing is great.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's really been cool having you in my corner, reaching out anytime I can. And really, I know the value you're going to add to our coaches today. And this conversation, Ceci, is something we actually had 2 years ago. And it was talking about this concept of confidence. And you always talk about how confidence shouldn't be created equally or doesn't have the same value. And I wanted to kind of tee up this conversation. I was reading through some of your old blogs, and this comes from the All Terrain blog. So I'll read this real quick, kind of tee it up, and then we'll dive into this whole concept of confidence. And so in your blog, you wrote, it almost feels like confidence is some magic source that we're trying to find the perfect amount that needs to go into our recipe for success. I'm going to beat the drum more. Of all confidence is not the same. In fact, more and more, I think there are different types of confidence. So maybe the conversation shouldn't be around what the right amount of confidence is, but more about what the right type of confidence is. And Ceci, I'm telling you, like, even before I got on this call, like, everything's about this whole idea of confidence. Our student athletes, they always say, oh, coach, I just wish I had more confidence. And then our coaches are like, man, I wish our athletes had more confidence. They look great in practice, but it doesn't translate to performance. And then I have parents that call and say, hey, how come my daughter, how come my son, I just wish they exhibited more confidence. But what is this whole idea about confidence? How come it shouldn't be created equally or shouldn't be viewed equally? And what is the right amount of confidence, Ceci?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. So I'm gonna tell a story to kick it off because I think it explains it really well. Trevor Reagan, who I know you also have, is someone in your corner. Yes. He put out a study at one point that he was actually trying to talk about practice methodologies. Yeah. So he put out a story on that actually is a study that was done on a baseball team, and they played with different types of batting practice. One of the types of batting practice, they did what's called block practice. So the coach was going to throw 30 pitches, 10 fastballs, 10 curveballs. We'll say 10 sliders. I forget what the actual pitches were. And the guys got to hit them, and they knew what, we're in the block of fastballs, we're in the block of curveballs, and the block of sliders. We'll call that Group A. Yeah. Group B was also getting 30 pitches thrown to them during batting practice, same fastball, curveball, slider, but they didn't get to know what pitch was getting thrown when. So randomized practice. And so they went through a batting practice. Day one, Group A kicks Group B's butt. Not surprising. I mean, they kind of get used to a fastball, then used to a curveball, then used to a slider, but they're kicking butt, feeling great. Group B struggles. The next day to go back batting practice, same thing. Next day, same thing. Group A is just continuously kicking Group B's butt. And this goes on for multiple weeks. And then they say to the two groups, okay, we're going to go into game-like competition. So you're still going to, do batting practice, same setup, but game-like, so you're not going to know what's coming. And they asked, and this is the part that Trevor didn't intend for me to get all excited about, but I did.
Right.
They asked each group, how confident are you coming into this game-like competition? And Group A, they've been kicking Group B's ass, and knocking the ball out of the park. Use the locker rooms, apologize.
Oh, you're all good.
Okay. And so they were way more confident. Group A is feeling great, right? Like they've had the batting practice where they're hitting homer after homer after homer. Group B is less confident. They're reporting less confidence. Well, who wins? Well, Group B kicks Group A's butt.
Yeah.
They're much better prepared.
Yeah.
And what clicked in my mind was not at all what Trevor was trying to get across in that study, although it was a really good one. But it was, hey, more confidence built on the wrong thing is the wrong type of confidence, and more is not better. And we got to pay attention to this, because as a mental performance coach, just like you said, I have players coming to me that say, I just need more confidence. Yeah. You have coaches coming to you saying, I just want my player to be more, they'd be so much better if they were a little more confident. And this study, well, if all we need is more confidence, well, then why didn't more confidence lead to higher performance?
Right.
So I think that's where I started really pondering, okay, if we asked Group B, okay, you're less confident, but what should make you confident? They were looking for the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. They were looking for success and big hits to be their indicator of what should make them feel great.
Right.
And Group A was looking for the wrong thing. They had all this success, but not in a game-like situation. And so they had all this confidence, but not based on anything real. So that's where I've got to, like, all confidence is not created equal. And we got to pay attention to what type of confidence we're building. And that's where I got into healthy and junk food confidence.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Trevor. Again, Trevor and I, every time we talk, your name comes up. And it's the whole, I think, Ceci, is this whole idea in going off of some of Trevor's research as far as fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And then your concept talking about healthy confidence versus junk food confidence. Like, I think when you have that junk food confidence, that's more of that fixed mindset. So can you kind of break down the differences between this junk food confidence versus healthy food confidence?
Yeah. So it's trying to explain, like, well, what's the difference between these? And I was like, oh, well, it's kind of like eating. Yeah. So if you think about when you eat junk food, you can eat junk food and feel very nice and full. So we'll think about that as being like full of confidence. But when you eat junk food, it's really easy to find. It tends to taste really good coming in, high sugar, right? And so we feel great eating it, and we feel pretty crappy after eating it. Yeah. Right? It doesn't last us very long, and it certainly doesn't tend to see us through hard times. It tends to kind of go into the system fast and leave the system fast. If you think about healthy food takes time to prepare. Oftentimes we need to think about it or meal prep. And chicken and broccoli is not the most exciting thing, so it doesn't always taste the most amazing. But the nutrients stay with us and they help fuel us for a long time. So if we take those and we kind of use those as our metaphors for different types of confidence, they actually are really similar. So junk food confidence are those like hype up, like you're born for this. And that hits on your fixed mindset piece, right? Yeah. It's the praise is like, we beat them last time, we're going to beat them this time. It's throwing a 55-mile-per-hour fastball down the center, hitting it out of the park, and thinking I'm ready for a baseball game because I can hit batting practice home runs. Yeah. Well, that's not real. It's junk food. You never get thrown a 55-mile-per-hour fastball in a baseball game, right? It's being an under 14 soccer player and beating the under 12 or under 10 team. That should not generate massive amounts of confidence for you. Or it can, but it's the junk food type. Mm-hmm. And the problem is when you hit real challenges, the junk food stuff goes away real quickly. Right. Healthy food confidence. Healthy food confidence is built off the belief that you can be challenged, that you can grow, that you can learn, and then you can evolve. And so when you think about building healthy food confidence for your athletes or as an athlete, you need to look for challenge, for moments where your players are going to get frustrated, where they're going to have to evolve, where they're going to have to grow. And you want them to gain confidence in that ability, that when they get challenged, they are a good problem solver. They are good at getting through tough times. they're better than others at getting through tough times. That's okay. But then when they meet these obstacles, even if they have less confidence, it doesn't go away because they know how to handle these situations. They know how to deal with a changing puzzle. They know how to deal with adversity. They know how to lose and dust themselves off and get back up. And when they lose, it doesn't change their confidence level. Yeah. If anything, it might double it down and make them more motivated.
Yeah. And listening to you talk, Ceci, my wheels start thinking about learning environments, right? And how are we as coaches, are we setting up the best context for our athletes? And I know you have this concept. You always talk about it. Our job isn't to protect our players, it's to prepare our players. Yeah. So looking at our context, how can we create this environment where this challenge is showing up? Because oftentimes I feel like I think about today's society, Ceci, and I think about, everything's instant gratification. We were talking to some kids the other day, like if they wanted to get food, there's 9,000 locations like 2 minutes away. They can get Uber Eats. Like we live in a society where everything comes easy. Everything's in the palm of the hand. They have all this information. They have all this access to information, but are they getting the right type of information? Right. And I think for us as coaches, we're the ones that create the environment. We create the context. So looking at our learning environments, when you're working with coaches, what does that look like? How can we create a better context, create more challenges, and actually making sure that this learning is sticking and transferring into performance?
I think you got to be upfront with your players, your athletes about what you're doing, right? Yeah. So you're not going to provide them an instant feel good, and they're going to notice. Yeah. There's really good research too about like the teachers that are the most liked are oftentimes not the ones that teach the most. So there's some, maybe it was in Range. It talked about like college math teachers that oftentimes it was one of the more disliked teachers that the next year their math scores were significantly higher than the most liked teacher. So I think there's a couple things. As coaches, we need to be open and upfront with our players about what we're doing and why. And we need to make our peace that you may not be the coach they like the most. When I'm interviewing players for the draft, I ask them what coach impacted them the most. I don't ask who they liked the most. Yeah. Because there's a difference. So I think we're upfront with our players about what we're creating. We're upfront with our players about the fact that we're going to challenge them, that we expect annoyance and frustration, that's important for being great. Yeah. And then we're really thoughtful about the praise and the feedback we're offering, and we're providing feedback and praise on the right things. And you got to be willing to get in the trenches with them. So you're going to have very frustrating days at practice where you challenge them and they're near the level of finding success, but they haven't gotten there. And you need to be able to be okay with them being frustrated, with them, yeah. They're not you're going to see very human responses to this. Yep. You're frustrated. Love it. Keep going. Yeah. Yep. That's annoying. You don't have it yet. You're so close. If you keep going, you're so close. It's not going to be, wow, Johnny, you got it on the first try. Way to go. You don't get to do that when you're building healthy confidence, because if they're getting it on the first try, it's likely junk. So you have to kind of revel in that frustration. You have to revel in the learning. You have to notice, hey, you didn't get it yet, but this is what I'm seeing. That like the spin on the ball is different. And if you keep going, then we're going to get there. And hey, we may have significant work ahead of us, but we're going to get there. A place that I love that's a kind of a true place sometimes, I think, can be the gym, right? Like we don't expect an athlete to come in and deadlift 500 pounds on the first day. Mm-hmm. That's not real. And we don't try to tell him that if he lifts today, he can do it tomorrow. Or if he got in the gym one day, we don't say, there you go, Johnny, you're in the best shape ever. Right? We don't do that. We know that takes work. And so I think there's this interesting place too, where if we honor what it means to actually skill build, then we should be okay that we don't have to tell them that they're God's gift tomorrow, or that they're even going to be God's gift in a week. That this is a constant work, and it is frustration, it is grind, and what you're paying is blood, sweat, and tears, and it's hard. But what makes great is doing things that most people won't do, and that's going through hard. Yeah. Or not going to the drive-through, eating the lunch that you made at home. It's not as fun.
And honestly, CC, by nature, we're able to do hard things. Like humans
Yeah.
by nature, we can do hard things. And
We're
as you're
built
talking,
for it.
I love this quote, and this came from Anson Dorrance just a couple weeks ago. He was on the Way of Champions podcast, and he said our biggest challenge as coaches is to get our athletes' personal narratives to the truth as
Mm,
quickly as possible. And again, like we're coming off of this self-esteem era where everyone was supposed to get a trophy and we're giving the false praise. And like you said earlier, like, oh, you're born to do this, right? So we're making our athletes shift into this fixed mindset. But what are some things you do? Like I know you're big on giving this pray this feedback that is very accurate and honest. Like how do we
yeah.
as coaches help our athletes if they are stuck in a fixed mindset, or you see them struggling, or they're searching for this confidence? Like how do we direct this conversation to shift them back more into this growth mindset?
I think one of the things we see at a pro level is that it becomes very hard to coach an athlete that lacks self-awareness. And
Yeah.
I actually would say it's a foundational component to mental performance, because if you're working with a player that's not self-aware, um, you don't have a reality to start from, right?
Yeah.
So I love Anson's piece on like, how do we help a player accurately see themselves? I think there's an interesting piece too. Oftentimes when I ask coaches why they've like withheld feedback or why they don't have a blunt conversation, they'll tell me they're worried about hurting that player's confidence.
Yeah.
And so somehow we think by letting the player stay in their delusion or their inaccurate sense of self, we're helping them. And I think that that's something we like to tell ourselves. I don't think that that's true. And I think the players even know, right? Like when they keep thinking I'm the greatest, but they're not winning every time.
Right.
There's a piece in their head. There's cognitive dissonance. It's not adding up.
Yeah.
So we're letting this, Johnny, did you do your homework? Yeah, I did my homework. Okay. And you never check as a parent, right?
Yeah.
So as good as a parent, I don't have to sit down and grind with him at the table. He told me he did it. It's his fault because he said he did it. The kid's getting away with it, but they know they're getting away with it. So they feel crummy inside and they're going to go to school the next day and get in trouble.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be until that you find out 6 weeks later on a progress report that they're failing the class. Let's not do that to our players.
Yeah.
So as hard as it is, and as much as you feel like the bad guy to say, okay, let's sit down and look it over. I'd like to see it. Oh, wow, you don't have it. Let's talk about that. How can I help? The same thing we want to do as coaches. Helping players be self-aware is giving them a real spot to go from. And it's also saying, you don't have to be scared of the reality because I, as your coach, am not scared of the reality.
Yeah.
So when you stop with a player and you say, let's talk about who you are as a player, and you have a really candid conversation with that player. Now, granted, we're probably talking at a maturity level of, I don't know, 12, 14, somewhere in there and up, where you can really sit down and have that conversation. But having an honest one is the biggest gift you can give the player or the person. Yeah. And the person needs it. And the person needs to be able to see that you're not scared to see them, the goods and the bad, and that you can coach from that point. Great coaches know their players have weaknesses and they're actively addressing them. So when you have that conversation that's honest about where that player is, now there's permission to address the weaknesses. Now you can create confidence in that player that, hey, when I was 14, I couldn't do this. Coach and I worked on it, and now I can. I was a basketball player that would never use my left hand. Coach made me go through practices. Man, I hated coach for that month and a half that he would only let me use my left hand. But now I can dribble with both hands. And that's why I don't ask about their favorite coach they liked. That's why I asked about the coach with the biggest impact, right? Yeah. Because I thought coach was a butt when he did that to me. I thought he was the worst human in the world. I thought about quitting basketball, but I didn't. And now I can dribble with both hands. And so I think that that's the piece, we got to remember as coaches, as teachers, you're there to help skill development. How do you help it if you're unwilling to have a real conversation? And you're helping their junk confidence, which just sets them up for larger disappointment and failure. When you don't have that conversation, you're not building any healthy confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Big takeaway there, Ceci, is, I think about the relationship coach to player. And we have to be mindful, like we have to see our athletes as people first, right? And Steve Kerr had a great line when he first took his job with the Golden State Warriors. They're like, Steve, how did you do it? Like, how did you get these guys to bond? And he said it had nothing to do with the offensive systems. Like, I had to win the relationship game first, right? And to have these honest conversations and to get our kids to commit to what we're challenging, we have to build these connections with our athletes, with our kids. Like, we have to see them as people first. And I think we're really great at providing feedback at times. We love to share information, share our knowledge, right? But I think what we have to do, Cece, a little bit better is generate more feedback and ask better questions to make sure we're guiding our athletes in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting piece. This exists in mental performance too. Sometimes when we think about getting to know our athletes, people are like, oh, tell me about your mom and dad, tell me about your brothers and sisters, tell me about, what you do on Saturday. And I think that's wonderful. But I actually that's actually not getting to know your player.
Yeah.
I think there's an interesting piece of, hey, where'd you learn to play baseball? Who did you get your swing from? Have you ever made any mechanical changes? Like, let me learn the ins and outs of who you are in my space as your baseball coach. For some players, asking all about their personal life could be prying and it could be uncomfortable and they may not want you there. And you may not have any business being there. You can know a player very well with not knowing all of their things off field. And I think finding out who the player is and meeting them where they're at and coaching from that space and seeing who they are as a competitor, as an athlete, to me, that's actually a coach really knowing their player. Yeah. Now, the player may invite you into their personal space, and that's wonderful. But I think sometimes coaches that are trying to know their players, I know he's got two brothers, and I know he was raised Baptist, and I know that his mother and his father are divorced, and I know that was hard on him. Okay, what's he working on right now? What does he think he needs to get better at? I don't know, but I think he needs to get better at this thing. Yeah. Well, how does he process winning and losing? Yeah. And you have to know who they are as a competitor, and that's a really important part of their identity too. So I think there's an interesting piece sometimes as coaches where we sometimes think we know our players, and we may know them as people and we may not know them as players. So I think there's a piece there too of, are you really coaching the person that's showing up as on the field, realizing they've chosen to show up and compete. They're playing this sport for a reason. And maybe it's so they run around and move if you're a rec coach. Right. And that's right too, right? So then recognizing that the thing that you should be coaching them from is like, this person needs to get around and run around for an hour and a half, and they don't want to be the best soccer player known to man. So don't nitpick at their tiny ball technique, right? They don't actually care. Like, help them get out and run around. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you bring that up. And this is where I see our kids, especially at the high school level, when expectations don't meet reality, that's where you start to see our student athletes struggle, because they come into the game thinking one thing, or they come into the game with like this junk food confidence, and then reality doesn't line up. And we all know sports. Sports is unpredictable. There's the high stakes, there's pressure, right? So when expectations don't meet reality, the biggest thing for me as a coach is being able to get our student athletes to pivot and be able to get to the current reality, change their expectations, and meet that current reality and keep going forward, stay in the present. But that's where I feel like they struggle, is they come in with that expectation and it doesn't line up with reality.
And people pick up expectations from all kinds of places around them, some of which we may be aware of and some of which we're not. And sometimes we're shocked by the expectations that players carry. Ken Ravizza used to talk about players having like bricks in their backpack, and the different like stressors or expectations were bricks they put in their backpack, and that weight that they carried with them everywhere, and how hard it is to compete or like run a track meet if you're carrying 30 pounds of bricks in your backpack. I think it's a wonderful metaphor. I think as a coach, being clear about what your expectations for them. Hey, I'm looking for us today to compete. What does competing mean? It means giving everything you've got, no matter whether it looks like we're going to win or lose in that moment. Like I just want to see us continually giving their all. And then you got to praise the heck out of it when you see it. And let them know. like if your team's down 9-0, be the coach screaming on the sideline still because your person went balls to the wall to try to get that ball or save it from going out of bounds. Do what you said you're going to do there, value what you said you're going to value. You never know what's expected at home, and you never know the narrative going all the way back to the story they built themselves. I won everything in middle school. I have to win everything in high school. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Who knows? And they may not know where it came from, but they're holding it. And that's a 50-pound backpack right there. Right. And so I think even coming in as maybe their freshman year coach and saying, you're a freshman competing in tennis. We're putting you pretty high up on our roster. If you don't win a match this year, I wouldn't be surprised. And that's actually okay. This is what I want to see. That can actually be shocking.
Yeah.
Maybe even piss off your player or your athlete, but it might also drop that 50-pound backpack off their back.
Yeah.
And I think you never totally know what that is. So asking, what's your expectation coming in this year? This is my expectation. This is the reality of competing at my school. We tell draft picks coming into baseball every year. A lot of them have come off of college teams or high school teams where they've won all of their games or 90% of their games, and they were hitting 400 or 500. Nobody hits that in professional baseball.
Yeah.
And winning over half your games is great, but you're going to have a lot of losses and you're going to play every day. These are not things that these guys are used to. And funny enough, they don't on their own go, oh, I'm going to play every day. No other team has, people don't win 90% of their games. And there's nobody hitting 400. They just get upset when the first time they see that they're batting 250.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I'm recognizing too as a coach, like we've got to talk our players through, hey, now that you're here, what does success look like here at my level? And where are you? And what do we need to address and work on? And I'll say one last thing. I think when we meet somebody and come into a situation and get to know a player early, and we say, hey, I'm loving seeing these parts of your game. This is a piece we need to work on. We're going to be addressing this in practice moving forward. You've just honored the fact that they're human and not perfect.
Yeah.
There is not a more real, more strong way to express belief in a human being than validating that they're not perfect and that you're excited to work with them, which as coaches, that's what we should be doing anyway.
Right.
And then helping them overcome something, like the most powerful thing you could do in a relationship. So you can talk to people that work for me. Like I like when I hire people, my first conversation is in the interview process. We love these things. This is why we hired you. We did have concerns in these spaces and we plan to address them with you. And obviously we hired you. So again, we love you. But we do address weaknesses off the bat because it gives them permission to be human. They don't come into this job thinking, oh, they hired me and think I'm going to solve all their problems or be perfect. I have to hide any mistakes or weaknesses I have. No, we saw them. We still hired you and we'll work on them.
Well, that's such a big piece is the whole vulnerability piece that, all the stuff that Brene Brown talks about where vulnerability is not a weakness, it's your greatest strength. But again, for me, it comes back to us as coaches in the environment we create. We have to create that psychological safety for our players. We have to have those real conversations because, again, every player has a narrative in their head, right? And all they're trying to do is seek validation to validate that story they have in their head. And again, a lot of that time, it doesn't line up with that reality. So again, for me, it's trying to help that athlete, having that honest conversation. And I was wondering, Ceci, if we could just real quick wrap up on this, especially at the high school level, we do have a lot of parents that do listen to our show too. Mm-hmm. How can we help our parents as far as conversations? And I think of Dr. Tim Elmore is one of my favorite people to learn from. And he says, as parents, our job is not to clear the path. Our job is to prepare our kids for the path. So how can our parents have better conversations with their kids as far as building the right type of confidence?
I'll come back to the phrase that you said, we talked about protecting someone versus preparing them.
Yeah.
And protecting someone means you shelter them from things and you bear the brunt of it so that they don't. Preparing them means that you are standing next to your child, looking at the reality moving forward and making sure they have the skills to navigate it. I have 3 kids and I think, when anything tough happens to my kids, you want to pull them in, you want to protect them. And I think there's a time and a place for that. But I also think if your child is healthy, mentally, physically capable of whatever the challenge is, if they have the ability to work through whatever the challenge is in front of them, if it's an appropriate challenge, how do you get in there and prepare them? You know, instead of trying to make it better, how do you sit and say, gosh, sweetie, this just feels crappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I think it's going there and being in the, you know, the yucky space, and then like, okay, what do we want to do with this crappy feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to quit? Do we want to try to get private lessons? Do we want to go in the backyard and play catch for a little bit? Like, you know, our next door neighbor, Johnny, is pretty good at this. You know, I know he's been working with his kid on it. You know, should we go knock next door and see if they'll help us? Hey, we know this great coach, Matt. Maybe he'd help us on that. You know, I think there's, my kids probably get tired of it. You know, they know like, they want to be better at something, then I'm going to tell them to practice.
Yeah.
The way we get good at something is practice. And it's my annoying chant, right? They hate me for it.
Yeah.
He's so good at that. How do you think he got good? You're going to tell me practice.
Practice. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I think that's, you know, again, my kids are competitive and they want to be good at things on the first go, like probably many kids. And they're disenfranchised. They're annoyed when they're not good at it off the bat. And I worried because they're smart kids and they're good at a great many things, that they would kind of naturally get a fixed mindset. And if they weren't good at something, they just quit it and it was a stupid sport. And so I wanted to instill that, like, there's no reason you should be good the first time.
Yeah.
And if you like it, practice it, and then you'll be good at it. So I think as parents, I would just say, be thoughtful about your responses. We all want to protect. But especially in today's world, I mean, I think we're seeing, you know, when we don't prepare kids, it's a tough world.
It is. Yeah.
And I love my kids, but I don't want them living in my basement till they're 50. So
I'm right there with you.
How do we prepare them?
Yeah. Yeah. And my thing, going back to Trevor Reagan, and we had a conversation, he does a great exercise where it's like, he asks everyone in the room, he's like, what's one thing you're good at? And they all name one thing. It might be basketball, it might be soccer, football, whatever it is. And then the next thing he says, well, guess what? At some point in your life, you are not good at that thing. How did you get there? Like you said, it's because of practice. It's willing to take those risks. It's willing to seek out the challenges. It's the willingness to push yourself to that next level to get good at something, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, is to ensure we're creating that right type of confidence. So with that, Ceci, we're kind of short on time, and I want to be respectful of your time. Do you have any final thoughts as far as to wrap up this conversation on confidence, or how we can better prepare our kids, or how we can create better environments as coaches and parents? Just any final thoughts to wrap this up?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, it's funny, you coming to the parenting lens gets me thinking, and even the Trevor Reagan story. I would just say, think about what we get excited about, because I do think, you know, positive and excited reinforcement is such a big deal. And I've heard some really amazing coaches that, in the past year, actually on the basketball side, like talk about like getting excited about like offensive or defensive schemes, whether or not they're success, like the bench is cheering when they pull off what they tried to pull off. And I think we, you know, when a 3-year-old draws their first piece of art and we go, oh, honey, that is so cool. My kid was scribbling with stuff in the bath last night. And I was like, look at that. It looks like a signature. Like, let's go.
Hang it up on the fridge.
It was not Picasso. But, you know, I think there's the piece too of like, I'm excited that he's experimenting with something. And so that's where my, you know, but that excitement helps him continue to experiment with something. Yeah. Right. And sometimes it's scary. You know, my daughter wanted to go try out for a baseball team. That was scary to me. I mean, I played boys sports, but boys aren't always nice, and especially in middle school. But I think we need to decide, is it important that she makes the team, or is it important that she had so much courage and loved the sport to go do that? Yeah. So what am I getting excited about for her? So I would just say, as parents, as coaches, as friends, as observers of sports, as fans, I think a big deal is like, what are you getting excited about? And get really excited.
I love that. And just to wrap up there, just when you said the word courage, and I always say this to our kids, I say this to parents, I say this to coaches, courage always lives inside of us, right? So I always promote go for courage first, because guess
Yeah.
what that natural byproduct is going to be? That right type of confidence, because it
Yes.
starts with taking that risk and being willing to put yourself out there. I'm going to try out for this team, or I'm going to try this new drill, all those things. But courage is always there. It lives inside of us. And
Yes.
that's the biggest piece, I think, for us is live with courage so that right type of confidence shows up.
Yeah. And as the adults in the room cheer on the courage.
Yeah, exactly. So literally, Cece, I could probably talk to you all day, but I can't thank you enough for being on the Being Champions podcast. Again, you're one of my favorite people to learn from. Just think about the 5 years and getting those text messages from our kids, the guy in the Naval Academy with the 3 foot space on his mirror. I know the impact you have on us here just in Fort Myers. I know baseball season's coming up. The Phillies are blessed to have you. And I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. It's so much fun to talk to you. And yeah, I know we could talk for hours, but hopefully this is helpful and looking forward to chat more.
Yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Cece. Hey, coaches, I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with Cece. Some of my big takeaways is we're always looking for that word confidence. As coaches, we're always wanting our athletes to have more confidence. And then on the athlete side, they're always searching for confidence. But I think the most important thing that Cece brought up was, are we building the right type of confidence, right? And looking at her concepts of that healthy confidence versus that junk food. That junk confidence is really easy to get, but it doesn't last. It doesn't translate to performance. We have to be deliberate. We have to challenge our kids. We have to put them in difficult situations where they do fail at times during practice. And it is a struggle. And sometimes it does look ugly. But we also know on the back end, the return of that is going to be the right confidence that leads to performance. So I think the big challenge is to look at your environment. Are you creating that junk food, or are you creating that healthy confidence that's going to bring out the best in our kids? So again, I can't thank you enough for listening to another episode of the Being Champions podcast, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks.